Now let's discuss the Meissner state a little bit further. And the Meissner effect is exhibited by the superconductor, namely, it expels all magnetic field from within its interior, whether it's a DC field or an AC magnetic field. It will expel all magnetic field from within its interior when it is cooled below the superconducting state. Now, and this is called as the perfect diamagnetism exhibited by the superconductor. Now, what does it mean to be perfectly diamagnetic? Let's look at this a little. Let's look at this concept a little bit more closely, and how does one actually see experimentally that the system is becoming perfectly diamagnetic. So, to discuss this, we know that the Meissner state of a superconductor implies that the magnetic field B is equal to 0 inside the superconductor. You apply a magnetic field H not equal to 0, and the and the superconductor inside it will have B equal to 0. So if you recall that from your electromagnetism course, that B is equal to H plus 4 pi m, where 4 pi m is the internal magnetization, is the magnetization of the material. So if you apply a magnetic field H, the system also develops shielding current. The system also responds by setting up currents inside the material, and these currents generate the magnetization. So there are local magnetic fields which are generated, which add on to the external field, and therefore what you see is the B is the field, which is the applied field, plus the field due to the currents inside the material. Okay, currents generated inside the material. Now in the case of a superconductor, the currents which are generated are shielding currents, a diamagnetic, very large diamagnetic shielding currents, which completely compensate the applied field. As a result, B becomes equal to 0. So B becomes equal to 0 implies that 4 pi m is equal to minus h. Of course, this 4 pi is a matter of units, so m is equal to minus h. Or if you say susceptibility, which is the DC magnetic susceptibility m by h or dm by dh, the DC magnetic susceptibility, if you take dm by dh, is equal to minus 1 over 4 pi. This is the characteristic signature of a perfect diamagnet. This means perfect diamagnetism, that if your susceptibility is minus 1, then you have perfect diamagnetism. So what you can do is that you know that there are various magnetometers which can measure the magnetization of a sample. So what you can do is that you can take a superconductor. First, you can take a superconducting material and measure its resistance as a function of temperature. The resistance as a function of temperature should go as, let me draw it in a different color. The resistance as a function of temperature should go like this, that below Tc it should turn superconducting. Now when you are below Tc, what you should do is that you should do for T less than Tc, you should do a magnetization measurement, namely measure the magnetization as a function of magnetic field. So what you should do is that you should measure the magnetization as a function of applied magnetic field. And here, if you are below Tc, if you are at a temperature T less than Tc, your magnetization versus field will look as a straight line, because the slope of this straight line is the susceptibility, which is minus 1 by 4 pi or minus 1. It is minus 1 by 4 pi or minus 1 depending on the units you have, but basically it will be a large slope. The slope, this is the maximum possible slope you can have for susceptibility, which is minus 1. Okay, and this is a signature of the Meissner effect in superconductors. Namely, the magnetization is negative. If you apply the magnetic field, this is your zero of magnetization, you apply a magnetic field, it shows a negative magnetization because the current setup in the material are such that the current setup in the material are such that they give rise to a negative magnetization in the sample, and the susceptibility or the slope of this m versus h is -1. Okay, and this is the experimental signature of Meissner effect. It's not R versus T that it suddenly drops, but along with R versus T that the resistance is dropping down to 0 below Tc, you should see this Meissner signal. Now in conventional metals, you know that they also exhibit diamagnetism because there are electrons, and these electrons, when you apply the magnetic field, will circulate such that they will also try to screen the magnetic field. But the extent of screening which metals can provide is very, very weak. If you know that the diamagnetic susceptibility of metals is 10 raised to -5 to 10 raised to -6. It's very weak, very, very weak. Compared to that, look at the susceptibility of a superconductor. It is of the order of -1. So it's a huge susceptibility. The diamagnetic susceptibility which you see in superconductor is fantastically large. It is orders of magnitude larger than that of a metal. And this is why it is entering, if one says this is why that the superconductor is a new thermodynamic state of the material. It is completely different properties with which cannot be explained by a metallic feature of the system. Okay. So experimental point of view, if you are ever searching for superconductivity, you have to look for features like this, which is the Meissner effect. Okay, now having discussed the Meissner effect and its various connotations and issues from a very physical point of view, let us look at the electromagnetic behavior of conductors, perfect conductors, and then look at superconductors. So the issue of electromagnetism of conductors and perfect conductors is something that you have already studied in your electromagnetic courses. So I will go through it very quickly, and then we will get into the more details of how to describe the Meissner state of a superconductor using electromagnetism. So for conductors, one can write that the curl of H is equal to J plus epsilon del E by del T, and then you can write this. So I will be going very fast and will not write down everything because these are already some things which you have studied. So and now you can use the expression that divergence of H is equal to 0. So curl of H will be minus del square H. J, you should use it as sigma times E, where sigma is the conductivity of a conductor. So if sigma is the conductivity of the conductor, then you use this. Curl of E is minus del B by del T, and B is equal to mu of H. If you use all of these and you put it into this, you can get an expression which is that del square H is sigma mu del H by del T plus epsilon mu del square H by del T square. So this is a well-known form of the magnetic field. So if you have an electromagnetic wave which is impinging on the superconductor, which has both electric and magnetic field components, you can have an equivalent expression also for the electric field. Okay, so now let us look at how does the metal or how does a normal conductor with a finite conductivity sigma respond to a impinging oscillating magnetic field which is falling on the material. So what you can assume is that the magnetic field has a form, the H has a form H naught z cap, namely the magnetic field is polarized along the z direction and it is propagating along the y direction. Let's say it has a propagation vector and has a frequency omega. This is the nature of the magnetic field. Okay, so it basically means that you have a material, let's say this is your z-axis, this is your x-axis, and your y-axis is inside, and the material is, this is your material. And what is happening is that on this face of the material which I have drawn in black, there is so the magnetic field is really propagating along this y-axis and it is impinging on this surface. So basically what you have is that you have a wave. So let's just So basically what you have is that you have a wave which is polarized in the y direction and which is falling on this surface. Okay, so this has an amplitude h naught. Okay, this is polarized in the z direction and it is falling on this metal which has a conductivity. This metal has a conductivity sigma. Now once it falls on the metal, how will it behave? So to see that, you just have to substitute this into this expression, and once you do that, one can show that of course you take k is equal to k1 plus you can first get the first expression is that you can write k in terms of omega. You get the dispersion relation, namely that k square is equal to I omega sigma mu plus epsilon mu omega square, and if you write k is equal to a real and imaginary part k2, then k square will be k1 square minus k2 square plus I k1 k2, and if you equate these two you can determine k1 and k2 independently. And what you can see from here is that if you put k is equal to k1 and k2 into this expression, then your magnetic field is of course h naught z cap e raised to I k1 y minus omega t, this is the real part, into e raised to minus k2y. The imaginary part gives rise to an exponentially damped nature of the wave. So as the wave impinges on the metal surface, so the moment the wave impinges on the metal surface, it is going to get exponentially damped inside the surface, and the distance up to which the wave is going to get damped inside the metal is something that you already know. It goes by the name of a skin depth. So let's look at that here. So what you can do is that this thing comes here, and this is h naught e raised to minus y by delta. So the amplitude is getting damped, and e raised to I k1y minus omega t, where delta is called the skin depth. This delta is 1 over k2, and you can show that for sigma, which is much greater than epsilon times omega, if sigma is much greater than epsilon times omega, then this expression is delta is nothing else but 2 by sigma mu omega. So the skin depth delta is, so what happens is that once you have this, so let me see if I can draw it as a cross section, so to make it more clear that, I'm sorry, this software keeps on doing its own thing, so it sometimes becomes difficult to control. So let's see, let me see if I can do a easier job of it. So this is the metal surface, and your wave is impinging here. Let's draw it in red. This is the wave impinging on the, and it is of course propagating along the y direction. So this is your y direction, this is your z direction, and your x direction is out of the plane of this page. So this is your initial H naught, which is falling on this metal surface, which has a conductivity sigma. And then what happens is that if you look at it inside, this wave which was originally oscillating, once it enters into the material, its amplitude will get exponentially damped. Okay, and the amplitude and the distance up to which it gets damped is sigma, which is the skin depth of the material, and delta is of course sigma. It is inversely proportional to the conductivity, and delta also is inversely proportional to the frequency of the wave. So this screening of the metal, from this ability of the metal to screen, the ability of the metal to screen AC magnetic field is somewhat like the Meissner effect. But where does it differ from the Meissner effect? Whereas metals can do this only for AC magnetic field, the screening for a superconductor can happen for a DC field as well. Okay, superconductors can screen both AC and DC magnetic fields. Okay, and you can see that the screening is associated with a characteristic length scale, which is here, it is the skin depth. When the metal actually screens an AC magnetic field, there is a skin depth which actually depends on the frequency. Okay, so we will look at it from the point of view, these length scales which are emerging. Okay, we can also look at it for the superconducting case. However, before we go there, let us look at the perfect conductor. Now that we have looked at a conductor with a finite sigma, let us look at a perfect conductor. What happens for a perfect conductor? And that will be the topic of our next lecture.